Hi, everybody, and welcome to another edition of GLP's 10 out of 10. And today we have with us British lighting designer, Paule Constable. Paule fell into the world of lighting after a flatmate who was a stage manager fell in love and ran off to Spain. Paule pretended to be her and reported for work as a follow spot operator at London's Hackney Empire. The rest is now history. Her opera work includes productions at the Royal Opera House in London, the Metropolitan Opera in New York, Welsh National Opera, and Glyndebourne. In dance, Paule has lit productions at the Royal Ballet, along with pieces for Kim Brandstrup, Tuckett and Matthew Bourne. In theatre, her work is extensive, having lit productions around the world, but she has enjoyed a long collaboration with the National Theatre in London, having been the first woman to light a show there, and now being an associate director. A couple of notable massive successes that have come from that collaboration are her work on Warhorse and The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Night. To date, Paule's office is home to 5 Laurence Olivier Awards, 2 Tony Awards, 3 Night of Illumination Swords, 2 New York Drama Desk Awards, 3 LA Critics Circle Awards, and a Helpman Award, amongst a long list of many others, also including a 2020 award from the London Critics Circle for services to theatre. Paule's style in her work can be described as stripped back, keeping things simple and clear and using naturalism as inspiration. In her own words, it's kind of Amish. Welcome, Paule Constable.
Thank you, Mark. It was slightly mortifying to hear yourself talked about.
It's just, I mean, it's phenomenal. It was difficult putting that together to decide, which points to highlight, because, it's a long and extensive career.
I've been around a long time.
I don't mean it like that, but, but with notable high points as well. And of course, being a female in the industry at a time where it was evolving and having to, be one of those people who had to forge your own path and stake your own claim to things. And the first woman to light a show at the National, that was a big one, I guess.
It was a big one. I mean, it's sort of ridiculous though, isn't it? It was 1993. We weren't in the dark ages.
Right.
I was kind of quite shocked by that when I realized.
Yes. But and then since then, I mean, I was trying to count how many shows you've done there now, and it was just a ridiculous number. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, it is a ridiculous number. It's kind of rude, really.
Right. Not letting anybody else in. Now you're in.
Yeah.
Elbows out. So absolutely phenomenal. And then in opera as well. When they started doing the opera awards, you won the first one as well. I realized that was more recent in 2013, but you
I won the first and only one actually for lighting.
Really?
I think I broke it or something. I have no idea. But I think in the first year they kind of acknowledged quite a few of us who had a body of work that they sort of recognized, and I was really fortunate to have won it. And then I think since then they've not felt able to sort of single lighting out as a separate thing. So I think I'm the only recipient of the Opera Award for lighting.
Wow, how about that? That's pretty darn special. That's incredible. Fantastic. Thanks so much for joining us today. We've got our 10 questions for you.
Such a pleasure
to go through. So let's kick it off with the first one. Okay. Going back in your career, what was your first show as a designer?
I think the first show where they asked for me to come and light the show. You spend your life when you're younger working in lighting with people kind of going, can you come and do a bit of lighting? And you go, yeah, I'll give it a go. And what's the difference between being the rigger, the programmer, and the lighting designer? Absolutely nothing, But I suppose it was about 1990. There was a company in Scotland called 784, based in Glasgow. And someone I'd been assisting had been working up there, and they'd asked him to do a show and he couldn't, so they asked me to do it. And it was a production of The Resistible Rise of Arturo Ui by Bertolt Brecht. And it was 784 were a small touring company, very kind of had their own van, it was all a bit kind of ad hoc. It was brilliant.
Right.
But the thing that was memorable about it, particularly for me, is that the director was a woman called Roanna Ben, who went on to be very senior in Channel 4. The set and costume designer was a woman called Ray Smith, who went on to design shows like Warhorse. And that was the first time Ray and I worked together. And we had a cast, I think, of 6, including 2 young actors who had just graduated from the Royal Scottish Academy, as it was then, one called David Tennant and one called Ashley Jensen. So hilariously, it was quite an auspicious moment. And we teched the show in this tiny community theatre called Motherwell Civic, where they had the snooker one week and us the next. And the actors did 6 actors playing all the parts in the show, you know, with 57 costume changes, and it was absolute insanity. And you think that in the middle of it all, you had these 4 people who sort of became giants in their world, but we had no idea in that moment. But we laughed and laughed and learned a lot.
Wow, that's phenomenal. That's phenomenal. Working with people like that, that's absolutely brilliant. If only you knew, as you say, what was going to come out of it. Brilliant. You've obviously done a huge number of productions. You've traveled the world, worked a lot of places, and I'm sure absolutely everything went smoothly every time on every production, right? Or maybe not. Is there one kind of Spinal Tap moment that really springs to mind of where it wasn't all plain sailing and it didn't quite go to plan?
Oh God, there's too many, aren't there? I mean, I was thinking about some of the most ridiculous situations I found myself in.
Right.
And before I started working in theatre, I worked very much in the kind of music side of the industry. And I used to work in a venue that they've now pulled down in London called the Astoria, which was just on the corner of Tottenham Court Road. And this company called Midnight Design did the lighting there, and I basically was part of the team.
Right.
And we had a sort of weird kind of review musical running in the evenings for a few weeks, and then afterwards we'd do gigs. And this particular evening we did a psychic TV gig. Now, psychic TV with this kind of insane avant-garde, kind of very out there collective. Anyway, unusually, because we'd been doing this review, there was sort of no security area. The punters were kind of straight onto the stage, which is quite unusual. And Genesis Piorage, who is the lead singer, used to really love kind of creating this sort of sense of anarchy and madness.
Right.
And he started singing this song, and I can't remember the name of the song, but slowly people started to get up on stage and join in, and he'd brought some dancers on, and these dancers weren't wearing very much. Anyway, by the middle of this number, most people had taken all their clothes off, and I was up at the desk with somebody on the board. I can't remember who was on the board. And suddenly all these naked people started picking up these lengths of arc line, which were all over the set, and started sort of swinging them around their heads. At which point, I think it was Paul on the desk turned to me and said, "You've got to go and sort that out." Right. So what? So I had to kind of run down onto stage, and myself and one of the other riggers, Wilf, we just spent the next sort of 10 minutes kind of amongst all these naked people trying to pull these bits of lighting off. Right. Please stop it. You're really going to hurt yourself in a minute. That's right. I don't know whether that's a suitable... I don't know whether that's a suitable answer, but it did come to mind as one of the most ludicrous situations I've ever found myself in.
That's absolutely perfect. Nobody's come up with anything close to that. Running around on stage full of naked people trying to get your lights back. That's absolutely brilliant. I'm sure that doesn't happen at the National Theatre.
Not that I recall.
No. What would you say is the best piece of advice that anyone has ever given you, either professionally or otherwise?
The best piece of advice, well, I suppose a very seminal piece of advice I was given. When I sort of came into working in theatre, I sort of worked quite on the sort of fringe and experimental side of theatre. And there was this brilliant lighting designer called Stevie Whitson.
Right.
And he was from New York, and he'd worked at La Mama, and he'd worked with all, Warhol and all these amazing people. And he'd ended up in London, and he was outrageous, absolutely outrageous. And I met him and started working with him a lot, and we did some festivals and some circus work together. And I adored working for him. And one summer he was doing a new piece for this company called Station House Opera.
Hmm.
And I was waiting for the phone call. You know, it's like it was going to tour Europe. It was very much my kind of scene. And we'd already worked on a similar show together already. And I didn't hear from him. And I rang him up and I said, Stevie, you know, I was really disappointed, you know, do you want me to do the gig? And he said, Paulie, can you please just fuck off and do your own work? And I was absolutely mortified. I was like, what do you mean? And then I realized about 5 years later that he'd given me this gift, which is that he was saying to me, stop doing this for other people. He was saying, you've got to go. You're really creative. You've got what it takes. I didn't have any formal lighting training. He was just saying, just go and do it. He said, girlfriend, you've got to just go and do it.
Right. Yeah.
And he was flamboyant and camp and brilliant. And he broke my heart in that moment. And it was the best thing anyone could have ever done for me.
Right. Wow. A real turning point.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Wow. Fantastic.
So I don't know whether you can print that, but that is the best advice anyone ever told me, ever gave me.
Right. Yeah.
Because I think there's a real moment of fear, isn't it? Going back to that time in your life where you love lighting and you do a bit of lighting and you're interested in lighting. The idea of stepping from that space into someone who considered themselves a lighting designer was really, really terrifying. And something I'd never really considered either. And yeah, he made me consider it in that kind of brilliant New York way.
It is, I guess, like jumping into the abyss, right? You don't know if there's a trampoline at the bottom and it'll help you bounce back up, or if there's just, solid granite and you're gonna.
Yeah, and there was nobody else like me, so I didn't, as you said at the beginning, there weren't many women around. I didn't, I needed someone to tell me I had the right to think I could do that.
Yes. Yeah. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. It was brilliant. And the other person who gave me some brilliant advice is my father, because my father was a fighter pilot. Okay. And we always did loads together. I have an older brother, but I was very sporty, as was my father. And my father always said to me, you can do anything you want to. You can't be a fighter pilot. In those days you couldn't, but he also said, I'd never want you to do this. He said, but you can do anything else you want to.
Right.
And it's funny, as somebody, born in the 60s and growing up in the 70s, I definitely had a father who was hugely empowering.
Right. That's fantastic. To have that support behind you, to have that wind in your sails.
Yeah.
Push you all the time. Brilliant. Well, both great pieces of advice. We'll, there we go. Take those. Again, such a phenomenal career so far. What's your proudest achievement, would you say, so far?
I think surviving.
Right. It's fair.
I think I'm really proud of, thanks to a very, very tolerant partner, but to having, managed to have 2 kids and have a sort of life as well as a body of work that I am really proud of my body of work. I'm proud of, I think I've never felt that I've had to make work that looks like other people have done it. I've always tried to find a way of staying true to what I think light can do and what I think light should be in a piece. And I think I would say 85–90% of the time that's true of the work that I've delivered. So I'm really proud of I suppose it's that I developed a voice. And I think there are a few lighting designers in life that you can look at a show by them and you can sort of feel it's their work. You can feel it's got their rigor and they're not saying it looks the same, but it's got a sense of itself and a sense of creative identity. And I would say in theatre and opera, that's people like Jean Kalman and Max Keller and Wolfgang Goebel, and I hope there's a little bit of that about my work. It sort of has its own voice,
right?
So yeah, survival more than anything else.
Survival, but being able to carve out your own little your own.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. I think that you mentioned, and of course, you know, we're touching on parts of your career as you entered and worked and created your own path and everything like that. But doing it as a working mother as well is a great achievement. Looking back and everything you had to, you know, battle through, I'm sure. So
I think it's, and I also hope that it's funny, the kind of moments when you realize you almost have a responsibility to be more aware of perception in a way. So I think it's really important, you know, even doing something like this, I think it's been important to learn to speak as a woman doing the job that I do, as a mother doing the job that I do. I mean, my kids are 25 and 22 now, you know, they're fine. But it's but I think it's important just for, I've never been sort of really easy in the limelight, as it were, but it is important because the more that you're seen, the more that other younger women realize things are possible. And that's a real responsibility, I think, to be taken seriously.
Yes. Yeah. And act as inspiration and as I guess part of a support mechanism as well for others who are wanting to know that it's possible.
Exactly, a support mechanism, a mentor, a role model. I'm not saying that people should do it how I did it, but it's possible. You know what I mean? So you just raise the visibility.
Yeah.
I mean, there's many more women working in the industry, certainly in theatre and musicals in the US than there are in the UK.
Yes.
I mean, partly for the obvious reasons, because of Theron and Jean Rosenthal, that the kind of two of the giants of American lighting were women. But I mean, things are changing slowly.
Yeah.
But it's certainly not been normal in the UK. And so that means that people like myself and Joe Town and people like that, we sort of need to bring people with us.
Yes. Yep. That's right. And show that it's all possible. So
yeah,
that's phenomenal.
By the way, you've had really, really fantastic gender balance on this series of interviews you've done.
Yes, we're trying to. I mean, very, very conscious of it, because of course we're picking guests who, based on the questions, we're picking guests who have a career, who've had, you know, have a body of work. It's difficult to pick, you know, somebody straight out of college to answer the 10 questions, but because a lot of them refer back to an extensive career of at some level. And of course, as we look back, you know, it is a male dominated, or was a male dominated industry. So, but we're actively, really trying to get that balance there because of the same reasons as well. So, yeah. There you go.
Well, thank you. It's hugely appreciated. And, you know, every sort of gesture like that makes a difference. It really does.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It all helps. It all serves as inspiration, which is great. You're obviously tremendously busy, doing, you know, lots of shows, and maybe one thing we'll touch on in a moment, a lot of interviews at the moment supporting the industry through the lockdown. But what do you normally do in your downtime?
The things that keep me sane, really, which is running. I run a lot, and I love being outside. So I swim in the ocean a lot. Okay. I surf, and I love the mountains. I love map reading and I love mountaineering. My partner's a climbing instructor. You know, the kids, we just spend all the time we can outside.
Right.
I sometimes think it's funny that a lot of my work is based on kind of ideas from the natural world. And I think it's funny, I spend all my time indoors recreating the world that I love outdoors.
Right.
But yeah, being outside is the thing I love most. So when I'm not working, I'm usually running up a hill or hiking up a mountain, right, or in the ocean.
Fantastic. And you live close to the ocean, right?
I'm in Brighton on the south coast, so very close to the ocean, but it's a 10-minute walk. It's not a very kind of it's not a romantic ocean. It is the English Channel,
right?
But we still swim in it.
Full of shipping trawlers and container ships. And
Yeah.
I'm sure probably not one of the warmest bodies of water in the.
Oh, it's been really cold this year. In fact, I haven't been in the sea for about a month, and I'm just building up to, I really should get in because it's going to feel so cold.
So it sets your body awake.
Yeah.
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 That's right.
Makes you feel more alive than anything else.
That's what they say. It'll either make you feel more alive or it'll kill you, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Of all of the places you've worked, do you have a particular favorite venue?
My favorite venue. I mean, obviously, I feel very, very, very at home at the National Theatre. It sort of is home to me. I've been incredibly lucky, and because it's got 3 auditoria, it's always different working there because the challenges in each space are so different. And one of them, the smaller space, is very flexible. It's no 2 shows are the same. So that's been an incredible sort of spine to my career. I really, really love working at Glyndebourne because I love the kind of resonance of that space and the kind of the auditorium is made of the most beautiful wood, and it's unlike anywhere else I've worked, and the sound is exquisite, and it just frames a space beautifully. I love the Young Vic because I grew up there as a kind of young associate artist when I was quite small, and working in it quite often then, before they'd done the redevelopment of the space, we really worked in the round there most of the time. And I think working in the round is so good for you as a lighting designer because you can't sit back and make things pictorial. You've always got to kind of make things, it's much more mercurial. It's things kind of appear, and you can't ever let the scenery drive. It's like in the round, it's always light that's kind of telling the story and helping an audience through. And making the space breathe. And I think it's such a brilliant discipline for a lighting designer to work in the round and celebrate the fact that everything looks different from everywhere you sit. So you can't control how an audience receive anything.
No,
it's much more egalitarian than that. So and it's different and shifting. And so I think the Young Vic will always be really, really sort of strong in my heart because I sort of feel it was the building that made me work hardest. And kind of gave the most return.
Think widest and excellent. The Young Vic, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Phenomenal venue. Obviously we've been in various different stages of lockdown, with access to the outdoors or not, which I'm sure has been tough based on all of your pastimes. But if you were at home and had a musical artist or a musical album, which would be the one that you could hang on to, who or what would that be?
It would be David Byrne, and it would probably be Stop Making Sense. It'd be Talking Heads, Stop Making Sense. It always makes me feel happy.
Okay. Wow. That's brilliant.
I remember the movie is so brilliant. Just that idea of, building and building and building and building.
Yes.
And it's funny because it's one of those albums that we've had both the kids here and their partners through lockdown, and it's one that we can all listen to. It's a great washing up, cooking, sunny day, winter's day, anything. It just changes the kind of mode in the room. And I went to see American Utopia, when he did that on Broadway that Rob lit. And I went on my own, and I just walked up and got a ticket on the night. I was over there for a couple of meetings. And it was so full of joy. And I just love the fact that he performs with so much joy. And that joy is in all of those albums as well.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Really comes across. Yeah.
I love it.
There we are. David Byrne, fantastic. And phenomenal artist. Really phenomenal. If you were able to wind the clock back and go and visit the teenage Paulie, and offer one piece of advice, what would that be?
Oh my goodness, I thought about answers for all of this. The teenage Paulie, what would I say to myself? I would definitely say I would say something about, don't ever think that you'll stop being frightened,
Okay.
but don't ever worry about it. You know, fear is manage. I always think it's interesting when you meet young people, young designers, young creatives.
Hmm.
One of the subjects that comes up a lot is the idea of fear.
Okay.
And I think with lighting, there's huge amounts of fear because you don't get to model, you know, lots of creatives in theatre and opera build model boxes, you try costumes, you get to try your singing, you try your sound, you do
Hmm.
all of this. With lighting, you're just kind of thrown in, you know, and what little process you have is incredibly exposed. Even if you use things like WYSIWYG and stuff, it's so far off the kind of reality
Hmm.
of the space that we share that I sort of think a lot of my journey through my career has been learning to manage fear, but also to realize that one, fear is important. Like, you always have to take risks to do good work, and you'll never know
Right.
all the answers. But actually, that's okay.
Hmm.
And don't try and narrow. I think if you get too fixated on trying to run away from fear, what happens is you narrow down your choices and you become less creative.
Right.
So
Come too safe.
I think there's something really valuable about meeting fear head on
Hmm.
and acknowledging that it's there and understanding that it's an important part of your process and who you are. And not knowing is means that you're being creative. Not knowing, you know, you can ask many questions and be as rigorous as you like, but you will never actually know until you're in there.
Hmm. And
And it's
yeah.
it's not to fear that in itself. It's not to fear the fear.
Right. Don't be frightened of fear. Yeah.
Mm.
That's a great
Because
one.
it's never going to go away.
Well, that's true, and I'm sure obviously you with all of your experience are one who could tell that. I mean, I guess working in different venues, working with different other creatives, working in different countries, everything's always going to bring a new challenge.
It is, and I think the only difference I think between myself and somebody younger is that I panic less when it's rubbish.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? It's like when you start to put something together and it's just not happening,
Hmm.
it's like that thing it's like the tyranny of a blank sheet of paper, isn't it? You can concentrate on everything that's wrong, or you can go, this is all terrible, but that one thing over there tells me what's right,
Yeah.
or tells me what direction I might go. So it's kind of, you can feel overwhelmed by the blank sheet of paper, or you
Hmm.
can go, I've found a clue, and isn't that brilliant?
Right.
And
Yeah.
it's, you know, that's two ways of it's like glass half full, glass half empty, isn't it?
Yep. Yep. That's right. Or trying to
Yeah.
try and find the positive, try and find the things, like you say, that are working.
Keep moving forward, keep making, keep asking yourself the questions. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Keep the process rolling.
Mm.
There we go. All right. Don't be frightened of fear. Keep it going. If you were able to sit down for a cup of coffee with any one person at all, be them living or past, who would that be?
Well, right now, I'm really, really ashamed to say this, and this is my political bone. It would either be Michael Gove or Boris Johnson, because I think there's so much that they don't understand about the mess that they've made for our industry post-Brexit.
Right.
I I would love, really love, just to sit down with one of them and talk it through,
Mm.
because our industry's been given a hard Brexit, and it is so detrimental to the largest growth industry in the UK. It's
Mm.
so dumb. I can't even begin to tell you. It's so frustrating. So that's not very imaginative, but actually right now, that's who I need to
Right.
actually gaffer tape to a chair
Right.
and just talk to them. I'm not going to hurt them. I
Right.
just need to talk to them. There's a lot of things that they need to understand
Yes.
that I think is unwitting um, chaos and impossibility that they've left what is a huge success story. You know, we're the third largest exporter in the world of cultural goods and services,
Mm.
and we can't do it at the moment.
No.
And some things are difficult, but some things are impossible now.
Right. Yeah.
So I can't believe that I would invite a Tory into my own home, but I would,
But
in order for the better of our industry, I would do that.
yes, do it in the garden maybe, but
Yeah, and what a waste, because there are so many other brilliant people I would
mm,
rather I'd rather have in the room. But
yeah.
no, that's very practical.
That's a great answer. You've never been one to shy away from standing up and saying out loud what you believe is right, and fighting for, you know, showing your voice and getting behind things. I know you spent a lot of time, even during the pandemic initially, I guess, with the association Freelancers Make Theatre Work in the UK, and having that trying to create that collective body so that all of the, you know, those individuals can be as one. And get the support that they need. But I guess obviously, yes, then with Brexit, that's, you know, that's a whole nother thing. And yeah, it seems disastrous. I mean, I'm here in Los Angeles looking at it from afar, so it's not as inside of it as you are. But yeah, the amount of upheaval there's been in terms of having to get visas and documents to move goods around and things just seems to be ridiculous.
And the restricted number of days that people can be inside the EU now, which means that touring is impossible.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, it's really short-sighted. I mean, it's funny, isn't it? Because it all started for me really with the Save Stage Lighting campaign, which is when there was a new kind of legal sort of loophole was being closed within the EU around light bulb manufacture and selling in the EU, and this is 2017, and it just felt like we were sort of slowly, it was like watching a car crash happen in slow motion.
Okay.
And you sort of look around you thinking people must be doing something about this, but actually everybody's very busy and slightly believes that somebody else is doing it. So with Rob Halliday and Robbie Butler, we sort of, the three of us sort of stepped into that space of really engaging with the politics and the lobbying side of trying to, believing that there must be a process by which we could get the EU to engage with something that felt they had mistakenly identified and were therefore going to break without knowing it.
Right.
And I think learning that you can get to a position of being able to speak truth to power was, I mean, I've always been quite political, and when I was younger and a student in London, I was very politically active. You know, and I'm a member of the Labour Party and things like that. But it was really learning the kind of machinations of politics and how you can get your voice heard. Right. So yes, when we hit the pandemic and we had problems about 70% of the industry, the entire freelance sector being ignored, I yet again, for some reason, I didn't feel able to let that lie.
Up to the challenge once more.
Yeah.
And it's phenomenal, of course, that you do that, and that you're not afraid to try and tackle some of these things head on, and to, you know, just wade right into the situation and try and fix it.
But it's funny, I mean, in a way, it's what we do as lighting designers when we're in the middle of a production, isn't it? I mean, I sort of genuinely believe, because we're the last thing to be added, I sort of think I've spent my entire career sort of believing there's no problem so big you can't solve it with better lighting. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? You're when you're looking at something in front of you and you're making a show, and yes, we're very short of time, but we're the one thing that can still change and still shift the picture and still shift how the audience receive and perceive. And I think there's something about that constant worrying and that constant belief that you can move something forward, change the picture, shift the rhythm. And I think I realised that I'm sort of doing that in life now as well.
Right. From top, yeah. When you go home or when you're in the office, so to speak. Yeah. Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. You're right. And that analogy works very well. Yeah. Lots of similarities there.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yes.
Fantastic. We make it to our last question.
Oh goodness, that was very.
I know, it just kind of skips by. In a moment, once we finish with the interview, you're gonna get a phone call from Team GB, and they're gonna call you up for the Olympics. Now, it could be either the Summer Games or the Winter Games. That's your call. But the question is, what's the sport they're going to call you up for? What's the one thing you'd like to have a go at?
Oh, I'd like to have a go at, or would be ridiculous having a go at. My ridiculous answer was synchronized swimming, because I
Right.
and actually that was, I went out and asked, Bram is just my son is just doing some hangboarding because he's a manic climber. I was
Mm.
like, come on, what's the answer? What would my Olympic sport be? He's like, synchronized swimming. How ridiculous would that be?
Right.
um what would I like to have a go at? I love sports, so I love long distance running, and I love all sorts of things, so I'm willing to give most things a go.
Right.
I'm terrible at golf.
Okay. Right. Quite the opposite, I guess. One's, yeah, full energy all the time. The other ones are quite a bit more relaxed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay.
What would yours be?
I changed mine. I did get asked once, and downhill skiing was what I said.
And
Anything
is,
I said, I think that's got some adrenaline behind it. Some people have said, the luge and the bobsleigh, and I think I could have a go at that. Actually, they could be quite fun.
I don't know whether I could still let go in that way. I could have done, I mean, I did a lot of skiing as a kid,
Mm.
and loved it. And I still will ski quite happily.
Yes.
But the idea of doing the bobsleigh, or something that is quite so out of control, I think I might have just lost that. I mean, obviously, there's an element of working in lighting that we're all slight adrenaline junkies, aren't we?
Mm.
Let's be honest.
Yes.
We all really get off on the kind of the seat of our pants being worn thinner and thinner. But I sometimes think when I'm lighting in kind of the Royal Opera House or something, and I think, thank God I did loads of pub theatre, because sometimes trying to pull a show out of the bag
Right.
in those mad opera houses where you get no time and you've got to solve all these problems in seconds, this is more like doing pub theatre than doing a grand opera house. It really is. So
Right.
there's that kind of gig mentality, I think, is something that we all know we can switch on and off.
Yes.
But I don't know whether I'm quite ready to do the bobsleigh
Right.
anymore. I think I've also almost run out of adrenaline.
Right.
But then it's funny, I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday about, we've got the South Downs in Brighton, so I can still do lots of walking, and it's really beautiful, but it's low, it's not rocky. And the thing about not being in the mountains is that there's not enough at stake. So in the mountains, when you get lost or the weather comes in, or you're 100 meters out with your map reading, that's the difference between life and death.
Right.
And that's not the case in the rolling hills of the South Downs.
Right.
So I do still crave that kind of adrenaline, that kind of, I like the stakes to be high.
Right. Maybe you can sit at the back so you don't see what's coming, but you still get the rush.
It's the one that's like a tea tray, the one that it's called the skeleton or the tray or something.
That's right. Yeah.
You are just throwing yourself down a tube of sheet ice on a tin tray.
That's right.
And then part of you goes, oh, that sounds like really good fun.
That's right.
And then you go, it's awful. My thought nowadays is, but oh my God, that would hurt so much. Right. I have sat at so many terrible production desks and sort of perched for weeks on end, months, years of my life on bits of timber and things. I've got a really bad back nowadays. So I think that's the thing that stops me wanting to do the bobsleigh. Because I sound like such an old bag.
Right. Any sport you like, as long as it's comfortable, as long as it's. What sport have cushions involved?
Exactly. Oh, how depressing is that?
Brilliant. Yeah, I'm sure there's some out there. There must be some. If not, we'll invent one. There we are.
Yeah.
Take it up to the Olympic Committee. So.
Yeah.
Paulie, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much. Obviously, I know you're extremely busy with obviously getting the message across and trying to help everybody out. So I really appreciate the time that you found for us today.
It's such a pleasure to talk about something a little bit less serious than most of my Zoom conversations. So thank you, Mark, for great questions as well.
Brilliant. It's been great. It's been inspirational. It's been amusing. It's your experience is just phenomenal to help and inspire others. So it's great. Absolutely.
Thank you.
I look forward, of course, to catching up in person whenever that may one day happen again. But of course, until then, stay safe, stay well.
Thank you.
And thanks again. And good luck. Keep up the campaigning. Good luck with it.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Take care.
Bye.
Right.